well, I got my start, not ironically, just interesting enough, I scored this little TV show called This Is the Life, which was for Lutheran television. I'm not Lutheran, I'm Jewish, but it was, I loved work. I scored like 60 episodes of that, and that work actually led me to working with Mike and Pete. A friend of mine, one of my best friends from high school, his father was at the time a famous TV star, Dennis Weaver. Does anyone remember Dennis Weaver? Wonderful guy, actually. And so Dennis was doing a TV show, and Mike and Pete were scoring it, and I just asked Robbie, I said, do you think your dad could get me into this session just to be a fly on the wall? And he said, yeah, of course. So I did, and then I asked, actually it was Pete, who was part of that older of the two duo, and I said, do you mind if I come? And he goes, come anytime. He was great. Pete was wonderful, and so I just started attending those, and I never actually asked to work for them. I was just too shy. I didn't, it felt like I just didn't. But one day Pete says, you got anything to play for me? You know? And I go, yeah, and I just finished all this music for this TV series. Plus I'd done some demo stuff with Don Ray. Don Ray had a class at UCLA Extension for scoring. And so I gave him that, and he liked it. Says, you want to score some cues? Because they were just doing lots of TV shows. Frank Denson was their only ghost at that time, but they were expanding because they just had so much stuff going on. And
list some of the shows. I mean, it is
like the A-Team, Magnum PI, Greatest American Heroes, Rousters, shows like that. And it was when I started at USC, my favorite kind of music was like early mid 20th century classical music.
Yeah, Mike Post's TV shows are pretty far away.
Totally different from me, and you know, and I sort of had a conversation with Pete about that. He goes, look, the thing you're going to get from working with us is you're going to learn how to write like somebody else, and that is a very useful thing to do. And I immediately said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Because if you're not familiar with those shows or what they did, what was unique about it at the time, and it was unique, they combined, and it was orchestral with a pop band in the center of the orchestra. So we had violins, cello, brass was like 3 trumpets, 3 horns, 2 trombones, a bass trombone, percussion, like 2 percussionists and 3 woodwind players. But then we had a band, which would be like a keyboard player who would play piano, clavinet, a Jupiter 6 or whatever the newest synthesizer was there at that time, and we had a drummer, guitarist, and a bass player.
Was that Larry Carlton's heyday, the guitarist?
It was John Goo mostly, and some other guys, but John.
A lot of the themes, I think, were Larry Carlton playing.
That could be, but he was. I mean, he may have played on some of those sessions, but I remember John really well. So that was, so you had a band inside, so it was like pop music infused orchestral scoring, and that was what made it kind of interesting. And at the time, it was like, whoa, it was a new thing. It was very exciting. So that was just a really fantastic opportunity for me. It was just paper and pencil and off to the copyist, and then you show up on Thursday or Friday and record, and then you spot a new show. And it was usually like 3 or 4 people. You know, I would either meet at Mike's house or Pete's house where we'd spot the show. I remember we spotted the A-Team pilot, and we all looked at each other and go, "This is such crap. This is not going to go 3 episodes. This is so stupid." We all agreed, and yet it became a huge hit. And so it just goes to show what we knew. But it just seemed so silly to, you know. But I mean, I'm really that's one of the iconic TV shows from that period. Stuff.
Who were your favorites from the 20th century when you were studying?
Well, Bartók, of course. Bartók, Stravinsky. Shostakovich, Prokofiev, the usual suspects. All those guys were just my heroes, and I still listen to that music all the time. Although I would say right now, and for the last few years, Mahler has been like my desert island composer. I could just listen to Mahler.
We get requests for the next time we do a long form score study. Shostakovich and Mahler come up quite a bit, so that may be in the future for us at some point.
That he was to me one of the true greats. So so that's what I listen to. That and hip hop when I drive with my son in the car. we go one direction, we have to listen to his radio station, and the other direction we have to listen to my radio station. So that's our deal. And the melodic material just suggested itself, you know. And my whole thought was, what musical idea suggests water? And to me, maybe to know it, it's like moving strings seemed like moving water. That was what I thought of. And so I thought, well, this fast, it felt like the flow of and movement of water. And that was what initiated this composition. Plus, the suggestion by Emily, like, listen to Neptune, which was mysterious. So, okay, it can be mysterious. It doesn't have to be dark and dissonant and scary and frightening. It can just be mysterious. Like, hell, what's going to happen in the city? It could be, I mean, when you see it, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's like New York in the 1940s or something, you know, and the 1950s, which is in the theory of the movie, of the game rather, it's where, when it was built, okay, you know. And this was not a cue I could mock up. But because it wasn't a cue they asked for, I felt like, who cares? If it's really, I wasn't sure it would sound as cool as it. I was very pleased with the way it sounded, but I wasn't sure, and I figured if it's a bonus cue that I'm throwing in.
You got time in the end of a session or
yeah,
something?
and I knew I would have time. I knew I would have the time. So if it started out and it was like complete chaos, mess, horrible, not working, I could say, you know, just an experiment, didn't work. But as soon as we heard it, and as soon as the audio director who was there, Michael Camper, says, this is really cool, I know where I can use this, it became really fun. And it did not, I thought it might take a while to record this. This recorded quickly. We recorded it in sections, actually, and that's very common. I commonly do that. So we would get up to a certain point. There was obvious stopping places, and then we'd pick up in the next section. So we'd 2 or 3 passes, and we'd get it, and then the next section.
And this was an
and he actually was pleased with that because he wanted me to deliver it in sections because then he used it in multiple ways, you know, because he had that option. And of course, with games, that's particularly useful. I think it could also be useful for a film too if they sometimes want to use this cue later. So this is you're listening to the complete version of it, but it had usefulness in its separate sections as well. I mean, I've had a couple of situations, like when we were in London recording Dante's Inferno, I don't know if we'll get to Dante's Inferno, but the choir was so magnificent and so good, we finished an hour early. And we had this magnificent choir, so I started I go, what if we do a cluster here, and I sort of just dictated some stuff on the stand, you know. I don't conduct choirs. I will always have a choir master because I think that's a unique conducting, and I just don't feel competent to do it. But I went out on the stage to go, what if we did this? What if we did like a cluster wedge? And none of those were nearly as interesting as things that I had thought through and had notated and you know what I mean? So that it's always better. The more you think about aleatoric music, the better it sounds. Because it seems like chaos or whatever, but if you just say to the orchestra, play whatever you want for 5 minutes, it's going to sound like trust me, it's just going to sound, it's going to be useless garbage. So it's really control of this and getting what you want. As you can see, I'm very particular about what I want to achieve.
Yeah, were you trying to make it more primal by not using any violas in it?
You know, I'll tell you this. When I worked for Mike Post and Pete Carpenter, they had no violas. They always had violins and cellos, and in this case, I did use it. And so when I first started, you know, my own career, I always thought, you know, what the hell do I need violas for? Because the cello go up to that high E, right, and the violins go. So that I'd rather have more strings, more violins, and more cello, and that sort of had permeated my thinking. I have since come to really appreciate violas. I wrote a viola concerto that was performed last year. So I will send mock-ups to the audio director or music director, and they'll put it in game. And if there is something that's fighting, they'll let me know. They actually test it in game. So I don't think too much about that, you know. I mean, in the first Bioshock, I did use actual musique concrète kind of devices where I actually went. There's a great place on the web called freesound. And I go. This has some really cool. There's a lot of junk up there, but there's some real gems of sound. So I went up there and found sounds of actual, you know, like a concertina, and I kind of would put just a little tiny bit of it in this nautical part of the score, or there's a buoy bell, and I used that, you know. So I would actually use like sounds from the real world. I found a website that had this that some doctor had put up of the sound of sick people's breathing, including the death rattle. He recorded the death rattle, and I put that in the score. It's really creepy.
Let's move on to, what is it?
Okay, Dante's Inferno was a game about Dante's Inferno. You go. I got to score hell, which was really fun. This is the hell theme. So I mean, it's a video game, and maybe it's blasphemous to take Dante's great poem from the 12th century, 13th century. Who knows? When did Dante Alighieri write the Inferno? But in any event, EA was making the game, and I just thought this is really a cool opportunity to again write really interesting music for this game. So this cue is a mix of aleatory, and there's a middle section that's quite precisely notated, and then it goes into sort of this big choir, you know, when you descend into hell you properly get into hell. So here, I mean, these are just like clusters that are just moving. Everybody's crescendoing and moving up in register. The brass are kind of doing some things. They're playing sort of different notes, and they're sort of given fast repetitions on given notes. But you see how this widens, and you see the extras. So it's like da 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 da. I can't even sing it, but I wanted them to get faster and slower, and that created this sort of weird pulse, and I wanted them to ascend and go higher in their register, so they could get to choose notes they wanted. But I wanted this speeding up and slowing down. Here in the low register, I'm just giving them sort of clusters to play and crescendo with. So this is just a real bunch of clusters here. Yeah, so these are just, you know, E flat, D, a nice cluster, and adding some more notes and building the cluster. So I wanted a build from pianissimo to forte, okay? And the choir is also just singing cluster, 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 and it's building by adding different sections of the choir, basses, tenors, altos, and then soprano coming in, all singing ah.
And those are precise pitches for the choir?
Yeah, but it's a cluster,
Okay.
so I mean, you know, it would have been okay. Even if they'd have been a quarter tone flat, it would have been okay. You know, it was just, and then it goes into the theme, which you'll hear. So why don't you play the opening and then play the whole cue, I think, and then we can go back and analyze it a bit.